So, all right, I have to get this thing that says it's being recorded. It's blocking all of you. Okay, now I can see everybody's face. So I'm Marion, and I'm here in New Orleans, and I'm glad to see everybody on this not so muggy Saturday morning. I can see the blue sky from my side front windows, and I can see these big trees behind my neighbor's house, and there's a slight breeze. So it's a great day to be alive, and I certainly am once again glad to see everybody. So that being said, I'm going to read the mission statement, and maybe a few other people, that'll give a few other people a chance to join. So the Erace mission statement says, we seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating our fellow human beings with love and respect. And for the umpteenth time, I'm glad to see everybody. I'm also going to get everybody right now to introduce himself or herself. So according to how you—
Sorry, Marion Louise will read the land acknowledgement she's put in the chat.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, because I had it in front of me. Okay, Louise.
Sorry, I guess I have to unmute for that and get some light. So we acknowledge that what we know as the United States is the traditional territory of indigenous peoples, and that there are many more nations and tribes that could be named here today. But members of our group today are on the lands of the Tonkawan, the Lipan Apache, and the Comanche in Austin, the Chitimacha and Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Lenape and Piscataway in Maryland, the Wampanoag and Nipmuc peoples in Boston, and the Kaula and Mojave in Riverside County, California. We thank their ancestors for being good stewards of these lands through the generations, and hope that we can continue this stewardship into the future.
Thank you, Louise. I was going to have everybody introduce themselves, and then I read the land acknowledgement. I really like that land acknowledgement. So according to how you're situated on my screen, I see Marva first. So Marva, would you tell us a few good words this morning?
Good morning. Glad to see Becky. Glad to see Beatrice. And many others that was missing, but mine fails for me this morning. My name is Marva. I've been attending Erace post-Katrina, and I'm glad to be here this morning. Thank you.
Okay, Beatrice.
Hi, good morning. Glad to be here. I'm in East Point, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, and been coming to Erace since 1993 when I lived in New Orleans, and co-founder with my late husband, Larry, of the At Grace Atlanta group. So glad to see everyone. Good morning again.
And Louise.
Hi, I'm Louise, been coming to Erace meetings for over 2 decades, first in New Orleans, and then Katrina happened, and now we are in Austin. And yes, it's great to see Beatrice and Rebecca again.
Thank you, Louise. Nora.
Good morning, everybody. I'm in Austin and happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nora. Rebecca. You're on mute, Rebecca.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here. It's been a little while. I've been too busy, but this is a topic that is so broad and so concerning. So thank you for bringing it up, and I'm glad to be here again. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts.
Thank you, Rebecca. Phyllis.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see all your faces. I am in New Orleans. I've been coming to Erace since 2008, and I am on call for work this morning, so I'm going to be dealing with some work issues. It looks like it's been going on for like the last hour. So I might not be on the screen.
Okay, thanks, Phyllis. Excuse me. Pedro?
Yeah, good morning. I'm in Austin or just outside of Austin. Into my third year, I think, with this fine group, and look forward to our discussion today. Yeah, the article is very, very well put together. So thank you for that choice of articles today.
Thank you, Pedro. Larry?
Good morning. I'm Larry. I'm here in New Orleans and just happy to see everybody. Glad to be here.
Okay. Lynn?
Good morning. I'm Lynn Frank. I'm a New Orleanian since 1970, and I'm glad to see you this morning.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Jean?
I'm so slow. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jean Walker. I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is next to the Washington, D.C. And I found this article very interesting. I look forward to our discussion as usual. Thank you, Marion.
You're very welcome, Jean. Nancy?
Good morning. I'm Nancy Moore. I have been coming to Erace since June of 2007, and I'm located in New Orleans.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Bill?
I'm Bill Ives, and once again, Cindy computer is acting up. She got a new computer, but her mailbox has not been set up, so she can't get the link to the meeting.
So I'm here too.
Cindy is here too. We also have a new member of our family. We got a young, healthy, large black cat named Sweetie. Our friend Nicole Bowie had a tenant who had a friend's cat that need to find a home, and Cindy's been wanting to have a cat since our Duke passed away. So we have Sweetie now, our Black Panther. I'll let Cindy say hello too.
Good morning, everybody. It's strange not to see my name, but I'll make sure the computer's fixed by next week. Actually, the computer's working, except it's not getting any mail. So I'm going to call Apple support, which I dread, but I'll do it. Talk to you soon. I'll be here, just not labeled.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, I'm scanning the screen to see if there's anyone else that has joined us, because you all have shifted on my screen. So with that being said, it's good to see everybody once again. Marion here in New Orleans, as I said previously. And now I'm going to tell you why I chose this article. I've been hearing about this critical race theory, as I'm sure many of you have, for more than a year now. And some of our politicians have been having conniption fits whenever the three words would come up. So I actually stumbled across this article and I said, let me see what in the name of Jehoshaphat these people are getting all tied up in knots about. So with that being said, we're going to get into it. And I'm putting my paper here so I can start writing names. So hopefully we're going to have a very good, lively discussion and find out why some of these people twisted themselves into pretzel knots over these three words. So who would like to be first? I'm looking for fingers. Lynn? Okay. Anyone else? While these eyeglasses are in focus, I cleaned them this morning. Must be my eyesight. Time to change glasses. All right, Lynn, you're gonna start the ball to rolling.
I hadn't planned to do that, but I wanted to respond to your statement that the politicians are having conniption fits over this concept. I just wanted to say that it's an artificial conniption fit. They know damn well that their definition of critical race theory is wrong. They are capturing the narrative as usual and turning it into something of a soundbite to gather votes around the country by scaring people and telling them lies. So it's very infuriating. Their claim that critical race theory will make white people feel bad, especially poor little white children in schools, is the complete reverse of the truth. The theory is meant to say nobody living today is at fault. We're not going to focus on that, although there are people at fault today for sure who whip up racism. We want to focus on society, how to change society and the structures of society so that everyone might live a good life and have an equal chance to reach their full potential and be happy. The pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. But they have turned into something opposite, that we're going to blame the white people for the bad conditions. And we're going to exaggerate the bad conditions. And we're going to make Black people the victims and blame all white people. So it's like George Orwell's book. They give a completely opposite meaning to a concept and hijack the concept and try to control society with these false narratives. It's infuriating. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Louise?
I rarely write down notes for discussions because I just, let it flow and see what's happening. But this was a really very good article about it, and it had some really good quotes in it, which I'm going to just regurgitate to y'all. One of them was about Stephen F. Austin, who I don't know if you know, founder of Austin, Texas, and bigwig in Texas, who referred to Mexicans as treacherous people, thieves, and murderers. Sounds familiar to someone that we know these days? Yeah. So, and he's hailed as a hero. Anyway, they also put, and I love what they actually explained critical race theory as. They say critical race theory says that racism is inherent in our institutions and structures of governance. It's ordinary and it's baked into all our consciousnesses in complex ways through education, government, the media, and our participation in systems. Racism must be addressed not just by punishing individuals, but by shifting structures and policies. So that's all it is. It's not like, and we must make little white children guilty. It's Jesus. It's just giving us history and showing us that we need to change what's been going on. And it also says, which I really appreciate, says, no, we shouldn't be preoccupied with trying to discern who is the racist here, because that moves the attention away from the structures. And this is a really deep subject, obviously. And it's certainly not being taught in grade school. Why grade school, of course we're not talking about such deep issues there, but we should teach some, of course, of what happened. But this is a deep subject, so it's pretty much for high school or college students anyway. So the people that are just fear-mongering, of course, the fear-mongering is huge. And trying to assign, guilt to these kids, it's just ridiculous. It's just another smokescreen to stop a proper, truthful education, about history. And as an educator, I can totally verify that it is having an impact on teachers and feeling, oh, maybe I shouldn't go there, or maybe so it is having an impact. It worked, they did put this smokescreen of false information about what this is, as if it's an enemy. It's ridiculous. And yes, you can tell I'm a little heated about it, but that's about it.
All right, thank you, Louise. Phyllis is gonna, did Phyllis say she was gonna leave? Rebecca, I have your name. I'm writing your name down now. all I have here,
I'm here, but what did you?
I only have my cell phone to keep time.
Oh, I can't keep time because I'm not going to be 100% available.
Okay, well,
I'll do that. I'll do that.
all right, Louise, thank you.
Mary,
Rebecca, did you
I
have your
my
hand?
hand up.
Okay, Bill, I have your name. I thought it was your hand up in the left-hand corner of the screen. I have Beatrice, Jean, Bill, and Rebecca. So Louise just finished. Anyone else? Okay, Beatrice.
In agreement completely with Lynn and Louise and their observations from this article. I have long known about critical race theory. When I say long, I mean when they started bringing it up with the foolishness about what the politicians said it was and what it really was. Derek Bell, and I'm not sure why he's not mentioned in this article too, and Kimberly Crenshaw early talked about and brought up the critical race theory as a way to begin explaining why, even though, and as Derek Bell said, all of the civil rights work and the demonstrations and the passage of the law still did not make a big difference in racism and inequality in the country. And they began to look at what's going on here. It's structural, it's baked in, and that is what the theory, critical race theory, is purporting. And it can also be used as a process, a lens through which to view inequalities with other races. It's not just African Americans and whites. So it is a theory. So the danger of allowing people of ill intent to take any idea and politicize it is just rampant. I mean, for these politicians, and they have to know, either they don't know what it is at all, and that Rufo boy intentionally presented the idea as something that was bad and it was racist, or they know and are intentionally fooling people for a cause. And it is just, it's maddening. And it is, to me, it is the same kind of foolishness with the book bannings, where people stand up and they've read 2 lines from Beloved and they don't want their children to read it. Well, good, don't let them read it. It is maddening. And I can understand Louise and Lynn, and anyone else having read this, feeling that nobody's going to read this kind of information. The people who just take whatever politicians tell them, this is bad, they're talking about your children. Children are going to feel guilty. White children are going to feel that they're being put as better than, and others are oppressors or oppressed. It is complicated if you want to think through it, but if you just want to hear an argument for your case, then you're just going to say, oh, critical race theory is awful. And I'm not going to find out what it is. I'm going to go by what people say it is. And that is the danger of people not doing deep dive research on issues and just accepting what people say. This is complicated. That's college work. They teach it in law school. Did
you hear? I'm sorry, maybe my alarm's not loud enough.
I'm so sorry. No, I didn't hear anything, child. I was going right on.
I didn't either.
Okay, I need to.
Yeah, ladies, feel free. Thank you, Beatrice, because I'm still looking at this clock here. All right, this was Beatrice. All right, we have Jean.
Well, Beatrice stole my thunder. And there's a wonderful article written by Jelani Cobb, who gives us the history of CRT. It was a New York Times article in 2021. And Derek Bell, who worked with Thurgood Marshall and Constance Baker Motley, they were all working with the NAACP in the South, and they were bringing these cases. And it's Derek Bell who, as Beatrice says, looked and said, we've gotten all these wins, but nothing's changed. And so it's taught in law school, or discussed in law school. It is not in the element in the school systems, K through 12, no way. It'd be way over their head if in fact they tried to do it. And it doesn't focus on the individual, as Beatrice said, it focuses the systemic racism in this country in every area. Education, housing, transportation, healthcare, you name it, as you all know. So I would really be interested in this. Who is the first person who started this rumor about it being in school? I mean, it's just idiotic. Shows how stupid he is. Anyway, so yeah, and I do recommend that article, although it does get a little depressing because you wonder whether things will ever be better. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Amal, I'm assuming your hand is up. You're after Rebecca. So Bill.
Yeah. I have seen a meme on Facebook that you might have seen. Imagine being so ashamed of your own history that you make it illegal to teach it to your grandchildren. And that says a lot, but critical race theory, our conversations have affirmed the tenets in this group of critical race theory. Every issue we've looked at, we found racism, structural racism in the issue, healthcare, education, politics. It's pervasive. And we've never talked about a topic where we don't see racism. So the article, this is Hispanic Heritage Month, and the article introduced me to a new term, Juan Crow, that impacts Hispanics. And there's been a lot of racism against Mexicans, even publicly. I remember when I was a kid, there was a joke about, I'm not going to do it in the fake accent, but my name is Jose Jimenez. And that was a comedian who came on with that racist joke. And I was watching, there was a show called The Office with Steve Carell. He played a clueless manager. And at one point, he asked a colleague, what's a polite term for a Mexican? And that just shows, and our last president started his campaign by making racist remarks about Mexicans. So it's I hear the word.
There's the buzzer. Thank you, Bill. Please feel free to join the group later on to speak.
Later on, I want to hear other people first.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Rebecca?
Do you see my electronic hand up?
I said, Glenn, I was trying not to speak so loudly, but I have your name on the list, Glenn.
All right.
Well, good morning again. So I've been reading a lot in the paper about how scarce teachers are and how they need more teachers in the schools, which is definitely true up here, even though we're not so rigid with teachers. But I think this is going to backfire on the Texans because it's very unclear. It's very unclear what they expect. I mean, they could interpret almost anything a teacher says in any of those grades as being racist. And if they start firing their teachers, I think that the teacher unions are going to get back at them. And a lot is going to happen. They won't come back to work unless the wages are better, unless and that there's less of this, picking over what they say and declaring, really, they could almost declare anything as racist. They ask people to cooperate, it could be considered racism because they're treating everybody equally. I don't know. It's really, really difficult for teachers, and there's a lot about that in the newspapers. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Rebecca. Amal?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So that the interesting thing I read in the article, one of the interesting things, is a good article, but one of the interesting things I read in the article is this says that Governor Greg Abbott signs into law a bill last week that restricts how current events in America's history of racism can be taught in Texas schools. It's been commonly referred to as critical race theory, as the critical race theory bill, though the term critical race theory doesn't even appear in the bill itself. Now, how stupid is that? How are you signing into law and naming something, and the actual naming, it doesn't even appear in the bill? So what is it exactly that you don't want that you're signing into law? What it is white folks are afraid of America's history being taught in its purest form. I ain't talking about the sugar-coated stuff that we learned in school. I'm talking about raw, uncut American history being taught, and the wool being pulled over as America is this great and wonderful country. And nobody wants that taught. That's the problem right there. Critical race theory is not even being taught in school. Anytime you teach, I call it teaching American history, not critical race theory, because if you're teaching American history, then you can't ignore America's racial present as well as its past. And that's the problem. People are afraid that America's past and present is going to be taught raw and uncut. And that will make America look bad on the world stage, because America presents itself around the world as this wonderful democracy. And it doesn't want to be embarrassed on the world stage by having the wool pulled over it, or off of it rather, and having this real history taught. Critical race theory is not even being taught in schools. I heard it.
Thank you, Amon. I have Glenn, Phyllis, and Bill, so I'm trying not, as I said, and I'll write your name, Louise, trying not to speak so loudly as to overshadow anyone's conversation while they're speaking. Okay, who did I say? Glenn. Here we are.
Yeah, it's a dumbing down of America. And, the politician is trying to get elected. So he's trying to find him a pool of people that will vote for him because he is protecting him against something. And so if it wasn't this theory, this race theory, it would have been something else. They are looking to see what are the hot buttons. And it has nothing to do that they actually believe that this is going to hurt something, but they know it's effective if you want to get some people to back you to win the election. You are a newcomer, or you are an old comer and want to stay in your office. You're going to adopt something that's going to get people to vote for you. And just so happens it's critical race theory this season. It'll be something else next season. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. Bill, is your hand up? It looks as if your hand is up. Well, I've written your name down.
I will be happy to talk.
All right, Phyllis.
On the list.
You'll be after Phyllis. I think I have your name. I do have your name on the list after Phyllis.
That's fine.
Phyllis? Maybe she's taking a call. Okay, we'll come back to Phyllis. Bill?
Yeah, well, I wanted to pick up on what Amal said about the misguided view their image would be tarnished on the world stage. The world already knows about our racism. Whenever we talk about human rights to China or Russia, they say, what about your country? There are no human rights in your country. How are you preaching to us? And the Nazis and the Afrikaans from South Africa came to the United States to study how we oppress people so they could learn from it. We have Nazis and Afrikaans coming to this country to study how we oppress people. So our image is already tarnished on the world stage. I'm a firm believer in truth and reconciliation. And if we admitted the wrongs of our oppression, the wrongs of our oppressive beginning, we would gain stature on the world stage by our honesty and the fact that we are admitting our sins of our past. So it's a misguided thing to think we can protect our image from what the world sees, because the world sees our oppression of minorities, of people of color. So I hope that our country is mature enough to admit its evil past. But bills like this, that Abbott signed, are trying to prevent that. It's like they want 2022 to go back to 1984, Orwell's 1984. I heard the bell. That's enough for now.
Further back to 1984, Bill. Try 1784. Louise?
Yeah, 1619.
Yes. Louise. And after Louise, the list is open.
So, Amal, I think you joined in a bit late, but it was, yeah, I was just saying about how that is just a smokescreen for, you know, teaching history, and they're trying to push the fear, you know, always trying to push the fear. I think that's a huge thing. The fear of the indigenous savage, you know, and then the fear of the black man raping your women, you know, the fear of this, the fear of that. They're trying to instill fear into people who don't really think for themselves or have a broad mind, perhaps. The latest one, by the way, being fentanyl, the drug fentanyl in Halloween candy. I mean, what, WTF, guys, what drug dealer is going to give away free drugs? Number one, you know, what, it's just preposterous. And yet, you know, huge amount of fear. Abbott, he's got to go. He is a devil and he needs to go. So hopefully we can vote him out. So fear, I think what it all boils down to is fear, and they want their vote, and so they scare people into voting for them. That's exactly what it is. And history, yeah, of course we need to teach history in schools, you know, warts and all. You know, history is ugly. History is disgustingly horrible, violent, and wrong, and we need to teach that. But of course, we're not going to teach the critical race theory to kids, as people have said before. You know, young elementary kids, you know, they're not ready for that, nor a middle school. Maybe you know, towards high school and definitely college. Yes, it's become a bad word, as I've said before. I'm repeating myself a little bit. Wait, I'm just checking see that I've actually. Oh, I've got 4 seconds. So yeah. Oh, there I go. All right.
Thank you, Louise. Phyllis, I called your name right after Glenn, but you were away from the microphone.
Marion, can I get on the list?
Pedro, okay, you'll be after Beatrice. Now, let me go back to my list. Phyllis, are you there? Okay, I see the little hand symbol up, but evidently she's not. So, Beatrice?
Yes. Do you see Amal's hand?
I do now.
Okay. Fear is such a powerful motivator. It is such a powerful motivator. Once you are afraid, whether it's afraid of crime, afraid of hearing history that lets people know that America is not been perfect, that colonialism was awful, and awful, chattel slavery was horrible. Once you are afraid of knowing this, you're not thinking. Once you are afraid, you're really not thinking. And that's a very valuable, like Glenn was saying, it's a valuable tool to stoke that emotion to get people to the polls. Now in our state, crime is supposedly a big issue that, you know, a politician can solve crime. We never look at what are the social proponents of crime. If we could just get more police and lock up more people, it would be better. No, it's not. But once, again, once you stoke fear, our legislature actually passed a bill called Decisive Concepts, that you can't divisive concepts. What does that mean? Of course, that was their critical race theory bill. But what divisive concept, what does that mean? We don't want to hurt white children's feelings. Please, what about African-American children? What about indigenous children? And then another thing people don't want to teach is social emotional learning, because social emotional learning will soften children up and they'll become gay. And it is just maddening, the level of ignorance that is preponderant in people who are supposed to be in legislature. Legislatures, they are so busy trying to keep their positions, or like Glenn said, get positions, creating monsters at every turn. So, you know, social emotional learning is a monster, teaching children how to deal with their feelings and talk about them, knowing about enslavement, and I heard it.
Thank you, Beatrice. You can get back on the list when you wish. Jean, are you raising your hand?
Is it too loud now?
What? No.
Oh, okay. All right.
No. The buzzer you meant? No. All right. Pedro. Thank you, Beatrice.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, my thoughts are I really like the article. I think getting to the concepts of it, moving away from individuals. As long as you talk about individuals, then it becomes emotional and it distracts us from what? It distracts us from the structural racism. So the example giving about housing, for instance, and the examples that we've shared, or at least I've shared on this program with y'all about the continued wealth inequality that persists into the 21st century. These are pernicious, ingrained results of the oppression. And with the oppression, you have benefactors, those that are privileged, whether they know it or not, and then those that are not benefactors, but are more victimized, or those that are oppressed. And I think that's where the backlash comes from, these people speaking against critical race theory. It's because they are of the privilege. They have and somehow realize that to even the playing field will ultimately reduce the levels of privilege. It has to. And so in order to address issues of wealth inequality, which is really the outcome of that oppression, the wealth that had been generated in the world and been monopolized by this class of people, whether they recognize it or not. So my last statement is just that critical race theory, it's simply critical thinking. It's really looking at real outcomes and ways to address the inequalities that are perniciously persist to this day. And until they are addressed, they will continue to perniciously persist. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Perfect timing. Amal, is your hand up? Because your name is, yeah, I have you down.
I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, the reality of the matter is critical race theory has not even been taught in schools from the K through 12. This is a college level curriculum, if you will. So the fear is, anytime you teach anything racially in the K through 12 range in school, it is now falling under the banner of critical race theory, even though that's not what it is. And that's what's been going on, that anytime you teach anything about racism or anything that has to do with race in the K through 12 curriculum, it scares people, and they'll just disguise it under the banner of, well, that's critical race theory being taught. No, it's not critical race theory being taught. It's America's history being taught. And that has been a present and historical problem, is that America don't want to look itself in the mirror. As far as offending white kids, I don't give a dog. I really don't, because I'm tired of, I'm not going to sugarcoat history at the expense of somebody's personal feelings. I'm not, because if I do that, then what does that say about how I see myself? So no, I don't care about white people's emotions and feelings as it relates to teaching true and honest American history. And if it offends somebody, then oh well, history offends you, because we can all find something in history that we offended by.
Thank you, Amal. Let's see, Jean. Louise, I have your name.
I don't know how many remember, many decades ago, there was a white teacher named Jane Elliott. And can you hear me? Jane Elliott, a white school teacher. And in order to, and it was elementary school children. And in order to help them to understand the racism in this country, she would separate the students by their eye color. So one day the blue-eyed were the oppressed and the brown eyes were the oppressors. And then the next time that they did it, the brown-eyed were the oppressed and the blue-eyed got to be the oppressors. Now, I never remember hearing any backlash about that. And I don't think that any of the children suffered. It was a way to her to explain, you know, the racism in this country. And she's also one who predicts, she said, we're all brothers and sisters. We all came out of Africa. And whether you like it or not, she said to Janali Cobb, she said, whether you like it or not, I'm your cousin. And I just, you know, it helped the kids to understand what was going on. Anyway, and I don't know that anybody was damaged.
Thank you, Jean. I remember that experiment. Larry?
There used to be a little white fellow that used to come to our meetings when we were on St. Charles. I think he was with the sheriff's office. And I miss him because he would sort of always be the loyal opposition. You know, we're all speaking the same thing this morning. And we all speak the same thing about every morning. You know, just about every Saturday, we generally speak the same thing. But it would help to have somebody who believes in something else, that we would have the chance to either educate him or her or dispute with him or her. You know, you go back to the root of the problems of racism in America. It rests with the so-called white church. You know, whether we want to admit it or talk about it or not. You know, studies and research shows that about 90% of Americans believe in some concept of God. But you know, we don't talk about God in our meetings. There has to be standards in terms of what's right, what's wrong, who defines racism, why is it wrong. Somebody has to set the standards, and the standards must be set by God. And it was the white church who adopted this theory that, you know, God ordained white people to rule over Black people. And the white church supported that to this day. That's why the so-called white evangelicals are silent. And Trump and the January 6th people can do no wrong. And I think until that is addressed and we keep quit running away from it. But everybody has some concept of God. Now, studies show that 56%, put me back on the list.
You're on the list, Larry. All right, Louise.
Jean, I learned about that experiment when I was getting my degree, and it is amazingly eye-opener for sure. And she was trying to do it. I don't think, particularly the kids learned something for sure, but she was trying to show, to contribute to the civil rights movement that, look, this is obviously, the way we treat people is very big, and as an educator, what I found interesting was it really affected their academics for the day, for the week or whatever, how long they did it for. It really affected how they, achieved in class. So I think it was a brilliant experiment. And yes, it totally shows that how we treat people and the unfairness of stuff, how that can affect your whole being, I really kudos to her for embarking on that. And Amal, I just want to say that I think white kids are not as stupid as people make out. I don't know who's saying they're going to be offended. I think they're pretty deep. I think they will understand, and they will totally get the unfairness and all the crap without feeling guilty. I'm pretty darn sure, I know quite a few young kids, and they're smarter or deeper than we all take them for. So, and yes, of course, who cares about offending them anyway, if that was the case, for sure. I mean, history is offensive, it's extremely offensive. But I don't think they will take it the wrong way. What people are scaring people about, they're not going to take that the wrong way. I truly believe that. I think kids are a little bit more open-minded than these legislators seem to think.
Perfect timing, Louise. Larry, you're back on the list.
Already? Okay. That particular article that we received, I think it basically closed out with these words. What they're trying to say with this is that the actions of the past aren't affecting the present, said Robinson, the 8th grade history teacher in Dallas. They want us to act like slavery and Jim Crow have no bearing on the issues in our society right now. And in some instances, they are succeeding. I have even heard it said on this program, that Black people need to forget about the past and just move on towards the future, and the present is always shaped by history. You can't escape it. You can't move forward unless you look back, but you have to look back with hopefully with the intent of righting what has been wrong, making amends, or done something. But we're America is at a crossroad, and don't think for a moment that a revolution cannot occur, because there are people who see themselves as being threatened on their last leg, and they do anything. I saw a movie one time, I've forgotten the name of it, where this group of terrorists invaded the White House and held the president hostage. I said, no, that could never happen in reality. But my God, look how close they got. It can happen. And don't be surprised if it doesn't happen, But 12% of Black men voted for Trump. 12%. That is what some people want to do, divide the Black community and cause us to do just that. People could care less about Herschel Walker. They just want to vote. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. This is amazing how time flies. I'm sitting here in this seat being the moderator, and it seems like the 2 minutes just flies by. I have Bill followed by Amal, and I'm scanning the screen. Anyone else? Okay, Bill.
Yeah, Larry, as you said about Herschel Walker, the campaign is not, they've gone away from his qualifications as a candidate. The only qualification that people are interested in, he's a reliable Republican vote. They just wanted him as a vehicle for their policies, not anything to do with him as a person. But I wanted to pick up on what you said earlier about God. I am not a practicing religious person, but my moral compass came from the Christian church. I was raised as a Southern Baptist, and then when we moved north, we became Episcopalians. But the Christian church has given me my moral compass, but it's also allowed me to see how the Christian church has been misused and for so long. And most major religions, Islam, I have great respect for the tenets of Islam, but the far extremist has misused the teachings of Islam too. So the church has given us great moral compasses, but it's giving some people an opportunity to abuse that moral compass for their own ends. So I just wanted to acknowledge the contribution of religion to our morality. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Bill. Amal, I have you on the list following Bill. Amal. And I also have Lynn.
Yes.
Can I get back onto Marion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And Larry.
it's
Okay.
interesting that this is taking place in Texas, because if you all remember, and I believe we had a meeting about it, Texas was the state that was changing its entire curriculum in school as it relates to history. And one of the things that they were going to change the language of was the language of slavery. And slavery was no longer going to be called slavery. They were going to call it involuntary servitude. If you remember, I don't know if too many people remember that. And they were going to actually change the language. So that, right, if you're going to call anything critical, that's critical. When you literally change the language of something like slavery to involuntary servitude. This is Texas we talking about. I can't remember how many years ago. I know it was more than 5 years ago. When they were talking about changing Texas school curriculum. And one of the things that were talked about was slavery and the changing of its name, because they didn't want to, quote, offend anybody. So they were going to change its language. So we have to be very careful when we see things like that. Critical race theory is just the thing right now, but like Glenn said, that, you know, this is the hot button topic for right now. And if we're not careful, if we don't challenge it, if we don't speak out against this idea that critical race theory is being taught in school to K through 12th graders, you know, what's next, man? You know, this is a crafty plan to try to change the language of history. And if we're not careful, they before you know it, it will be involuntary servitude versus slavery. So we got to keep beating that band over the head.
All right, thank you, Amal. We have Lynn, followed by Pedro. So Lynn, make sure you do your finger.
Beatrice,
so I can see
I have a question for Larry, but it was too long for the what do we call it, the explanation question. What could religious groups in this country do to address racism? Can you imagine a national conference of Baptists, Methodists, Episcopals, evangelicals, and maybe even Catholics saying, what is our moral compass? Is abortion so all pervasive that we throw everything else under the bus and we don't worry about racism, we don't worry about poverty, we don't worry about taking rights away from people? What can we stand for? Can you imagine that all of the leaders of all these churches could meet together and discuss those topics? Somebody said, I would vote for anybody who would follow the Republican agenda, even if you wanted the abortion of all baby eagles. I mean, that was absolutely shocking. Nothing else matters except a conservative agenda and outlawing abortion no matter what. Can you imagine, Larry, what can the church do to address these issues and find again its moral compass and respect for all human life?
Is that a clarifying question, Lynn?
Yes,
that
it
a
was a
question?
clarifying question, but in long format. That's why I raised my one
Are you
finger.
addressing it to Larry?
Oh, was that a question for me to answer, or answer when it comes?
Yes, yes,
my
it's
turn?
a question for you, a clarifying question for you,
Oh, okay.
if you care to address it.
Yes, of course. From my perspective of the church and Christianity, everybody who say they're Christian don't necessarily represent the Christianity of the Bible. You know, that is one reason that turned a lot of blacks off to quote unquote Christianity, because they always perceive Christianity as a white man's religion. And instead of picking up the Bible and reading the Bible and see what the Bible says. So relative to your question, from a Christian perspective, I think there are two goals relative to Christianity. One is salvation. And then after salvation, there's character change. And if our characters don't change, you know, to the extent that we understand what love means, not love as we define love, but love according to God's standards. You know, love is sacrificial. And even in the slogan of Eracism, it says about treating everybody with love and respect. What is love? You know, what is love? And so that would be my answer, Lynn, is first for the church to return to its mission to save souls, and then second, to transform character.
All right, Larry, thank you. Lynn, does that satisfy your question to some extent?
It's an approach to the question.
All right.
And it's very foundational to return to love. Now, salvation is not something that I believe in, but I do believe in the power of the church. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Lynn. Pedro, we hadn't forgotten about you. I have your name on the list.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that Lynn and Reverend Larry are talking about. So many times I get on the list and then I hear the next person talk and I got something that really gets triggered. But I think it's an outstanding point. I think that's what oppression does, Lynn, is it takes a wedge topic like abortion, and its impact is to convolute all of these other atrocities of oppression, like racism and sexism and wealthism and, you know, et cetera, and stuff. And so, yeah, I think your point's very well taken, that we need leadership from a moral, critical perspective, which I do believe can come from the church. Even though I'm not a church-going person, I believe in so many of those moral precepts and such. And I think a lot of other people do too. And if they can't put aside the issue of abortion in order to address all these other things, then that's kind of part of the influence of oppression in my thinking. Anyhow, I mean, that was one thing I wanted to mention. The other thing was in the article, the new Texas law about that they don't want to promote these precepts about race, yet within the existing curriculum, there's all of these underlying influences that promote kind of a racist perspective and such. And I think that's really, again, important, circling back to the issues of how important information is. If we remain uneducated, then it's harder to see the nature of oppression as Dr. King would want us to see, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Surprisingly, Larry, you're up next. In fact, your name is the last name on the list. So the list is open. I'm scanning the screen. If I missed your finger, please wiggle it around or even speak out if you have to, so I can put your name on the list. Beatrice, after Larry.
Okay, one thing.
Rebecca.
One thing you said, Lynn, is that you don't believe in salvation, but you believe in the power of the church. And of course, I respect that. You know, every individual is entitled to believe whatever they want to believe. And I respect it with love and respect. But the church is about salvation. That's the mission of the church. Now, we have turned it around, made it out of something else, money and power and things of that type. But the church, from the biblical perspective, and nobody could find another definition from the biblical perspective of Christianity, the number one call of the church is the saving of souls. And then the character must be transformed. On the issue of abortion, you know, I always say, as it relates to society and the perpetuation of society, what if everybody was doing it? And I think that would be a good measurement of whether something might be right or wrong or moral or good or bad. What if everybody was doing it? So what if everybody committed abortion? I mean, obviously it would be the end of society as we know it. You know, I think Iran, with the way Iran is cracking down on its women, I don't support that. I don't like the way they're treating women, but I think if Iran looked to America and said, we don't want our women to become like that, this might be personal and prejudice, but that's my thinking on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Beatrice.
Yeah, just want to quickly say the term committed abortion is I find offensive, but I want to say what an example of unmitigated white supremacy, that white politicians can decide what history needs to be taught. The unmitigated gall that these people can sit in the legislature and decide whose history can be taught and whose cannot. And I remember on a completely different train reading the Daughters of the Confederacy writing their catechisms for young children about the lost cause and how valiant their soldiers were in the Civil War. And that was taught in schools. I just think we need to be really careful, because what happened to another thing. Why do white parents assume that their children, rather than being compassionate and understanding what has happened to African people in this country that has brought us to where we are, that they would feel guilt rather than compassion? Who are you raising as children? What is their outlook about life? Why decide that they're going to feel guilty or downtrodden or that they're oppressors? This is very complex, but it comes down to people being able to think for themselves, being able to learn what it is that politicians are feeding you, read about stuff. And I take an obligation to educate people wherever I can about something like critical race theory, because people do not know. And it is those of us who know, it is our responsibility. It just came to me that trying to tell me whose history is valuable enough to be taught is a prime example of white supremacy. And I've set my own time. I'm finished.
Thank you, Beatrice. All right, we have Rebecca, Phyllis, and Louise. I called your name earlier, Phyllis, but I assumed you were busy.
I have
You
my
had-
hand up, Marion.
Okay, I didn't see it, Bill. So I'm putting you on after Louise, and then the time, it's 11:05. Okay. We have Rebecca,
Thank you.
followed by Phyllis.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the points of view. So thank you. But also, I'm still worried about our teachers because I think the way this law is written, it could be interpreted in any way, and that, you know, a community that just for some reason didn't like its teacher could, in Texas, could pretend that they were teaching critical race theory when they weren't doing that at all. And that I think the unions are very strong. I think they will protect their teachers, and it's hard to hire teachers now, as I'm sure you know, because the wages are too low, the wages are unfair. And but if you put on top of that, this kind of threat about what they say and how they say it, it really becomes very difficult to teach. So I just want to emphasize that again as a reason not to write laws the way this Texas law is written. So, but thanks for all the other points of view about it too.
Thank you, Rebecca. Phyllis?
Thanks. I didn't know I was on the list, but here I am. I concur with
Earlier, and I called your name and you were away from the microphone, I think.
Okay. Thank you. I concur with what Beatrice said about the term committing abortion being offensive. It absolutely is. And just that. And I wasn't able to hear a lot of the conversation, but honestly, this critical race theory is just like what do they call it? A dog whistle to get the white supremacist parents all worked up about something that is absolutely not happening in grade K through 12. This is law school theory. So to be worked up about a book about Sojourner Truth or whatever, saying it's critical race theory, it's not. It's a book about a story of a person that happened in our history who did good things. And also, why wouldn't a little white kid, if they're taught about the abolitionists, why wouldn't they identify with the abolitionists? But I think those parents don't want their kids identifying with people who fight for justice and social justice. They want their little white kids upholding the patriarchy and white supremacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Louise?
Exactly, Phyllis. They could be inspired, to fight for the rights of people. I mean, it's just preposterous. So we talked a lot about fear, that politicians are fear mongering. And I'm sorry, Larry, but your comment just made me think, hey, maybe some of the churches are fear mongering too, with words like committing abortion. That's fear mongering. That's sending fear into people. And so I don't really think that's quite right. And it could be, it's an equivalent thing there, but under the guise of godliness, which, let's face it, so many atrocities have happened under the guise of godliness. So yeah, I'm certainly not I don't go to any church, but I'm certainly not in need of any saving. And I don't believe, but anyway, that's a whole nother barrel of eggs, isn't it? Anyway, that's it for me.
Thank you, Louise. Bill, it's 11:10, so I'm closing the list.
I want to say two things. First of all, I went to junior high in Texas. In the 8th grade, we were taught Texas history. the glorification of the whites who stole Mexico so they could stole Texas from Mexico so they could have slaves. That's the real history of Texas. All these white came to Texas and said, we want this as another state so we can have slaves. That was the reason for Texas independence. It was slavery. I also want to say for my reading, abortion was not original issue of the white evangelicals. Their original wedge issue was fighting school integration. And when the schools became integrated, the politicians needed to find a new wedge issue. The evangelicals thought when Roe was enacted, that was mainly a Catholic issue. So they pushed abortion as a wedge issue. But whether or not abortion is right, the issue was not whether you believe abortion is right or wrong. The issue is separation of church and state. The Jewish faith believes that life begins with the first breath. So abortion laws are violating the faith of Judaism. They're imposing another religion onto Judaism and probably many other people. Abortion is a very difficult issue. I don't think I would personally do it, but I don't want to legislate for other people. So, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. All right, so Bill was the last person on the list, and according to my clock, I have 11:12. There, I have 4 names. If I've left your name off, please speak up. I can assure you it's unintentional. So 4 people here, wait, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, that have not spoken during the big discussion. 1, 2, 3, 4. Marva, Nancy, Nora, and Lynetta. Did I miss?
Cindy has not spoken.
Cindy, oh, Cindy, my goodness, I'm so sorry. And Bill, I took gabapentin last night. I think I did pretty good. I hope I sound like I'm coherent, but that back pain got the best of me last night, and I knew I wasn't going to sleep, so I knocked the pain out somewhat. But
your voice is great.
La La Land. Thank you. I still feel like I'm in La La Land though. So Marva, if you care to give us a few words, final thoughts for this beautiful Saturday.
Was a very interesting and fact-finding discussion. I enjoyed hearing all of views, and thank you for such a lively discussion. And Marion, thank you for such an interesting article.
Thank you very much. Oh, I forgot to say, those persons that hadn't spoken, you can have the 2 minutes. So Nancy is next.
It was a very interesting discussion and many perspectives. Some I agree with, some I don't, but it was interesting. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Nora?
Yeah, so 2 things. I want to be like Beto and saying, yeah, I'm going to come take your guns. But I don't like it when people keep mentioning that critical race theory is not taught in K through 12. It's college level, and like Beto, I would want to say Hell yeah, we're going to teach critical race theory. It's just a theory and it can be taught age appropriate. I don't see any problem with, with critical race theory. And then the other thing is about white children being blamed, which is so silly to me, but I do blame the white parents and white people, some of my good family and friends among them who perpetuate inequality by not mentioning one word. I've never heard some people say one word about the inequality that exists. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Okay. Leonetta?
Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I was late. I just want to update everybody. My father's now in ICU. This is his third bout with pneumonia, so I just want to update everybody.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you for picking the subject, Nan. Thank you. That was a nice subject, nice article, good discussion. My contribution to this discussion is that when I used to be when I used to run the meetings, I did one meeting on racism and religion, and it sounds like we need to, the people who, the powers that be, maybe that's another subject that we need to revisit and talk about. I think it's a wonderful topic. Larry brought up a lot of good points about religion and racism in the United States. Also, this is just Lynetta's personal opinion. I think when the pandemic came and the children, the school shut down, I think there was some politician or mother or somebody that didn't have anything to do, looked over their children's shoulder, saw the work that they was doing, and jumped on this and got on a website like My Neighbor or something, and it was born. All this foolishness was born. That's just my opinion, how this foolishness got started. And I think I'm calling it foolishness, but I think it's something that everybody in America need to take seriously. Just with banning these books. Some of these books, I agree. I think it was you, Louise, that made the comment that some of these books that these people are banning, they've never even read them. They're going by what somebody else said. And about these books, some of these books are beautiful books, beautiful stories. And why are they being banned? And what gives you the, and it's not just the books in the school, they're trying to ban books in library. And how dare you tell me what I can go in the library and check out? If you don't want to read it, that's fine. But if I want to read it, it needs to be there. My taxpayer dollars paid for that book, and it should be available for me to read. And my, how am I doing with time? Because I got one more thing to say.
Go ahead, don't stop talking. Okay. We'll stop you.
Okay, about the abortion issue, it did start with the Catholic Church, but how you feel about abortion, I think we need to pay attention to it, because I think it's bigger than abortion. I agree with them all. It's something that they just picked and got people to run with it as a divisive theory. They're taking away people's rights, and I feel that if we don't fight this about abortion, regardless of how you feel, I think my fear is slavery may come back, because it's a law. It was something that was banned by the Supreme Court. Just like they're banning abortion, they can bring back slavery. And I just think it just needs to be something that we need to pay attention to.
That wasn't me.
All right, thank you, Leonetta. Cindy, we haven't heard from Cindy, I don't think.
I'm here with Bill, although my name didn't come over. My new computer will be functional next week for sure.
Yes. I have your name and I don't have a check mark next to it. So Cindy, go for it.
I wanted to just say, having taught in the public schools in New Orleans for nearly 40 years, my class was always at least 40% white, 40% black, and 20% other, because Tulane foreign students brought a lot of kids with them. So it was a wonderful mix. Early in the year, probably October, because they had to get settled into a routine and they had to be tamed, as somebody said. We talked about colors of skin. We put all the hands in a circle, the whole big ring of these arms and hands, and we talked about all the different colors and the variations. And without exception, kids accept differences in people are okay. It's just a different color. It's not a big deal. I would like to think they take that idea with them as they grow older. And I know that some of them turn into prejudiced people. I haven't met any of them grown up, but hopefully the experience of being in a mixed group of people, understanding that, hey, we're all people. We like to do similar things. And we also get upset if somebody calls us a name. It's a slow process to see change. And then someone comes along like some of our politicians and it throws you backwards. But you know, we've got to keep on doing. And contact, I think, is one of the biggest means of changing ideas. If you don't have contact with someone who's different from you, how do you understand that they're just plain people like you? It's a slow process, but it's a valuable process to hang in with it. Thanks for letting me be on, even though my name's not there. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Cindy. So with that being said, I think we covered everybody who didn't have a chance to speak.
Except Glenn. I don't think Glenn had a chance.
Glenn, you just introduced yourself. You didn't make a comment?
I don't think he did.
Glenn, he did? All right. So let's do this little 1 minute roundup, you all. Goodness, it's time. Is that true when you're having fun, time flies, even though this has been a very serious and important topic? So Marva, you go first. You're at the top of the screen. You pass? Okay. Beatrice, you're next. Because I'm between you and Marva on the screen. 1 minute roundup.
Took me a moment to unmute. Great conversation. Thanks for the article. Good to hear everybody's ideas. Real quickly with that blue eye, brown eye thing, the children immediately got into the roles and kept those roles going. They just changed their personalities, and it was just unbelievable how it affected them even on the playground. So that stuff is serious. Good conversation. Yeah, the topic of reproductive rights is something that needs to be further delved into without termination of pregnancy, separated from the whole range of reproductive rights and weaponizing people's wombs. So thanks again for your article.
You're very
Thanks,
welcome.
Phyllis.
Louise?
So if you'd asked me 30 years ago if I was going to be living in Texas, I would have laughed in your face. It was, and I apologize, y'all Texas people, because yeah, it's a laughable state with ridiculous laws and ridiculous governing and all of that. But here I am. So life does that to you. We just needed a southern state a southern city rather, that was a little bit open-minded, which Austin is. So that's why we're here. I guess I'm apologizing for being in Texas. That's all I'm saying. Great conversation, definitely really good. And thanks.
Thank you, Louise. Nora, your final words?
I think I already gave them in the 2 minute.
Okay, all right. All right, you all, don't forget I told you this Gabby Penton has been La La Land. Okay, Rebecca?
Okay, well, I think we have to Remember, Lyndon Johnson came from Texas, and he was kind of helpful in in terms of making things a little bit easier. But he also taught us. He taught Mexican Americans for 1 or 2 years, and he really loved it. And I think it really influenced him and what he did later. So, yes, Texas seems awful right now, but there was one good person in the past, in the recent past. But thanks, great discussion. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. Pedro?
Yeah, I was really intrigued by today's discussion. I think at the end of the day, for me, what's really important takeaway is that critical race theory and the opposition to it. In the article, it says kind of towards the bottom that talking about the Texas bill was to, quote, create enough confusion and possible concern that teachers or districts would just simply not talk about issues of race or racism for fear that it's going to create some kind of conflict or job insecurity, who knows? But I think that's the point of the term oppression. When I think of oppression, again, I go back to some people benefit, the 1/10 of 1% or whatever, and then all of these different strategies in order to inhibit getting at the core of oppression, right? And so I think when you talk about individual racism, it distracts us and gets us to see that some people fight for a status quo that are African American, that are very, very on the wrong side of history, and that racism is promoted not by individuals, but by systems and people that benefit from systems. And not all people that benefit from systems are white. They can be other people of race, and we see that all the time and such. So I think the kind of infusing racism with classism is really, really important in order to get the roots of oppression. Thank you for the discussion. And
thank you, Pedro. Larry?
As touching upon Lyndon Baines Johnson from Texas, he stepped out of his usual political history and stood on the floor of Congress, I believe it was, and said, "We shall overcome." And I'm sorry, my answer to Lynn could not have been more thorough, but there's a book that Martin Luther King wrote called Strength to Love. And that is the essence of what we all need. Only love can conquer hate. And I think when we understand the true meaning of love, not the surface love, but when we understand the true meaning of love and the sacrificial nature of love, it can't help but have an impact. It can't help but change character. It can't help but change the hearts of people. And so as Lynetta mentioned, maybe we could delve a little bit deeper into these subjects, because religion was, okay, sorry.
Thank you, Larry. I know that the time is flying. Lynn, your 1 minute final.
Thank you, Marion. That was such a clearly written article. It will be very useful when we do our missionary work among our friends and neighbors and say critical race theory is not what you think it is. I'll keep it handy so I can refer to it. Talking about states, Louisiana has been pretty lucky with John Bell Edwards, who is a conservative Democrat and who steered us through COVID. I shudder to think what's waiting for us in the next election. But look at California. The most horrible story has just come out of California, the Los Angeles City Council, where Latin Americans are saying horrible things about Black members of their own city council and the Black population. I think that's kind of maybe that's a situation that when the manger is empty, the horses bite each other. That's an old French saying. I don't know if we say it in English or not, but because they're not equal, they don't have equal power, Latin Americans are turned against Blacks. And I shudder to think that if there were solidarity, we could make this a better country.
Thank you, Lynn. Jean?
Thank you. Very thought-provoking discussions. And I just, it is a systemic issue. And I think that we need to make sure that we get out the vote and start looking at our legislatures and making sure that we start addressing some of the systemic issues. It is a systemic problem, and it's not something that's CRT is not geared towards individuals at all, but towards the root of the problem, which is in our systems. Thank you. And I appreciate everybody's input. And I once again recommend Jelani Cobb's article in the New York Times on the critical race theory.
Thank you.
Thank you, and
All
everybody
right.
have a wonderful week.
Thank you, thank you, Jean. Nancy?
I already spoke, Marion.
Oh, all right. Phyllis, is anyone else? Now, this is the wrap up.
I will give a 1-minute wrap up if it's my turn.
I need to give her 1 minute as well.
All right.
And so does.
Phyllis.
And Phyllis, and is there anyone else?
Bill.
Bill.
Glenn.
And Glenn.
Phyllis, Bill, and Glenn.
Phyllis,
And
Bill, and-
Amal
okay.
for wrap
And
up.
Amal.
Pardon me, please, folks. All right, Phyllis.
Well, I want to say, Leonetta, you might get your wish about your topic because that might be the direction I'm headed in for next week. And I'm sorry I couldn't participate more. Call is giving me a headache today. And I do think we all need to be aware of how the Christian right is working very hard on the downfall of this country in various ways, taking away rights from women. They're looking at voting rights, taking away marriage rights. They need to be voted and ousted out of power. And I am becoming very concerned that there is going to be a situation of civil war or like that. And also I want to say that using language like Iran's women implies it's patriarchal focus. It implies that the country or the men of Iran, they belong to them. I would say the women of Iran. I would not say Iran's women, because that's a sort of a patriarchal languaging situation. And men are also participating in those street protests with the women.
Thank you, Phyllis. Bill, 1 minute.
Great article, Marion. And I learned a lot from this conversation. I want to say that I agree completely with Larry that only love can conquer hate. And the teachings in the Bible are a great source of love. There are other sources, but the Bible is a great source for love. And if I was a Christian minister, I would be very angry at how my religion is being misused as a form of oppression. And I owe, as I said, I owe my moral compass to the Bible. And thanks everyone for the discussion.
Thank you, Bill. Glenn?
And Glenn.
Glenn, are you there?
Oh, excuse me. I enjoyed listening today, and but that's not the, I really like to bring a little opposition. I couldn't find any opposition to bring today, so y'all did a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Amal?
Yeah, great article. A lot of wisdom, and just, don't teach Black history or white history, just teach America's history. And that'll throw the idea of critical race theory out the window, because that's not what's being done.
All right, thank you, Amal. I thanked each one of you individually. I'm thanking you generally now. Let me see if I can gather my thoughts here. Several things were running to my mind while I was trying to concentrate and focus on making sure everyone had an opportunity to speak. And I thought about something I said before. You all have perhaps remember me saying this, but I was talking to my granddaughter last week, and I remember telling her that I'd been walking away from the pool where I was going for water aerobics last year, and with one of the ladies, and we were walking to our cars, and we were talking about this and that, and somehow or another, it was along racial lines. And I said, well, I think some people believe God made a mistake when he created other people besides just white people. And she said she'd never heard anybody say that before. I said, well, I'm not, and hear me out, folks, I'm not criticizing anybody who doesn't go to church or who doesn't maybe believe there is a God. But I took it by myself one time to try to go through the Bible and read the words written in red. And those of you that are familiar with the Bible know that oftentimes, many times, Larry knows this, the words of Christ are written in red. So I started focusing on that. And most of the time, I'd say the majority of the time, Christ's words were sometimes directed in a way that showed he was displeased, and he was trying to guide people to be better people. And some people didn't appreciate it, as we know, because he was crucified. But I was always trying to be mindful. Now, maybe I was leaving out a lot of the message or the understanding of what each Bible passage meant, but I focused on the red words, which are supposed to be the words of Christ. So with that being said, I think it's ridiculous that people want to whitewash, pardon that pun, American history. I remember one time in a social studies book, there was at the end of a chapter, a brief paragraph about slavery and followed by this question. And I remember this question: what were the benefits, or would you say there were benefits of slavery? This was in the 6th grade class. And there was always this little outspoken white boy. I thought he was a little junior bigot, because he would always say negative things about the other kids in the class, because the school where I was for 28 of the 41 years that I taught was very diverse, and we had kids from 4 different continents. And he was saying, well, as far as slavery is concerned, the people who had the slaves made a lot of money because they didn't have to pay the slaves. So he was a child, but 11 years old, but he understood that the people that had been kidnapped and brought across that Atlantic Ocean weren't working for wages. And that kid was able to understand that there was a financial benefit, a monetary benefit for the people who owned the slaves. The slaves weren't getting any money, but the people who owned them, who kidnapped them, were making the money. And that has always stuck in my mind. And I've been out of the classroom for 12 years, but I remember, and I can even see that child's face and I can hear his voice. And he was always making these profound and sometimes radical comments. So I wonder where he is now. We haven't crossed paths since he left the school, but I did
Was
meet
his
one.
name Jeff Landry?
I'm sorry.
Was his name Jeff Landry?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't want to say his name. He might be related to one of our participants in the discussion. So with that being said, I had to cover up my phone, so I don't know what time. Oh, it's 11:40, so we're out of time. But I want to thank everyone for their participation. I got a lot out of this article. It made me a little angry, but I'm trying to tell myself my anger isn't being felt by the people that I'm angry with. So who am I hurting? I'm hurting myself. So these discussions on Saturday give me an outlet. And today, I'll say it again, thank you all for your participation and your comments. I think this is how we can help make the world a better place, by listening to our fellow human beings, and that's what we all are. Nobody in this group is a giraffe or a squirrel. We're all human beings. And it was the creator who decided he liked diversity. You all have heard me say that before. So I accept that. So thank you all. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody next week.